Okay, welcome everyone. Thank you for being here at the launch of the Bridge project. This is a very exciting moment for both the RedLAC and CAFÉ networks, because this is something that we've been working on for a while now, and this is a very exciting day for us. Today we will be showing you, we'll be giving a short introduction of what the Bridge project is. You will be watching a short video, very short, and then I will be explaining the initiative also shortly. We will then have the signing of a tripartite letter of agreement between the CAFÉ network, the RedLAC network, and FFEM. And then we will have a short panel discussion that will be moderated by David Meyers, in which we will hear CAFÉ and RedLAC members talk about some of the experiences that they've had in working with the private sector. So first off, we will be hearing, well, I will be explaining, as I said. Then we will have the words of Katy de la Garza, who is the director of the Forever Costa Rica Association and is representing RedLAC. And we will then hear from Karen Price, who is the president of the CAFÉ network. And finally, we will hear from Stephanie Bouzige-Eschmann, who is the Secretary General of FFEM. So this is the first part that will be a little bit more with some speeches and interesting words from our leaders. And then we will go on to the panel. So this is the project that we have, and we will show you a short video that will show a little bit more of what we will be doing in the next couple of years. Sorry, yes, we're gonna, there we go. Next slide. Ah. So thank you very much. Now, I will just very briefly explain what concretely we want to accomplish with this project. So as you heard, the RedLAC network and the CAFÉ network have been working for a long time together. And we now want to find ways in which we can start working with the private sector in order to reach the 2030 goals. So we will do that by instructing and supporting our members through communities of practice, through mentoring, through exchanges of experiences in learning how do we communicate with the private sector? How do we find ways to engage? How do we bridge, right? How do we bridge the tasks and everything that is being done by the conservation sector and everything that is being done by the private sector? So we will start by doing that. We will also have the possibility of member funds to access grants. These grants will be in different levels. So it will also give the opportunity for smaller funds to access funding for feasibility studies. It will also have the possibility of piloting projects, and it will also have the possibility of scaling and replicating models that were successful in other countries, or even the ones that they have already implemented themselves. So this is also a big part of this. Yeah. Yeah, so that's a big part of it. The grants that will be given out, this will be structured with committees that will be supervising and will be selecting the best projects. They will have also support from consultants that will make sure that they are able to structure and draft their projects in the best way possible to ensure that funds are used in the more efficient way. And then we will make sure that all of this is managed, that all this knowledge that will come out of here is managed and is exchanged in a very, with the top technology at the moment, with making sure that we introduce user experience and social networks, right? And the ability of bring technology into all of this. So this is basically what we are going to do. You will be hearing further from Constance and also from others who will explain what we want to accomplish and where does this come from? Where does the experience of working together in networks come from, and our long-standing relationship from CAFÉ and RedLAC. So now I am going to give the floor to Constance Corbier-Barto. Constance? Oh, sorry. Yes, now. Sorry. We will now have the words of Katy de la Garza, sorry, who will be explaining about how Forever Costa Rica, as the manager of these funds, and how the RedLAC network is going to be managing this.
Good morning, everyone. Can you hear me okay? Buenos dias. I am actually the new executive director for Forever Costa Rica. This is my first week, and what a week. So it's been a, dive in and just meet everybody. And it's been wonderful to meet the partners and the community. So I'm really happy to be here. During the past 3 days that I have been attending sessions, most of them in the finance and business or private sector and conservation initiatives, the word bridge has been coming up at least in 90% of the sessions. So it's like, what a great moment to launch our bridge. And what we call the Bridge Project will allow our conservation trust fund communities to come together and share our experiences and ideas on working with the private sector and put our brains together to find innovative mechanisms to engage with them. We have a menu with examples of private sector collaborations and models, but as we say in Spanish, how do we eat it? Like, how do we eat all of this menu and ingredients? And that's what this special collaboration brings us to. There are multiple efforts of private and conservation sector projects, but many times these are very siloed. So having a community of practice like this one will allow us to come together to analyze the opportunities, foresee the challenges, and become hubs of resources and to innovate together. Forever Costa Rica is very committed to the goals of this project and very honored to be the executing the funds of the Bridge Project and to benefit the conservation efforts of Africa, Latin America, and the Caribbean, and hopefully inspire others to do the same. So thank you, FFEM, thank you, MAVA, and members of RedLAC and CAFÉ for trusting us. And yeah, I'll let the others explain more about the project. Thank you.
Thank you, Kathy. We will now hear from Karen Price, who is the president of the CAFÉ network. If you don't want that.
Good morning, everybody. Can you all hear me? Thank you so much. It's an absolute honor and pleasure to be here this morning to celebrate the launch of this bridge project between CAFÉ and RedLAC. As you have already heard, that conservation trust funds are really well positioned to be conveners, to link private investors, public authorities, NGOs, and local communities to facilitate the replication and scaling up of conservation efforts towards the required levels. And therefore, as CTFs, generally as institutions, we have been building our capacities to achieve this. And also further through collaboration with the RedLAC network. This will be the second project that we're implementing with RedLAC. The first project was looking at capacity building of conservation trust funds. And also this was supported through mentorships and to build institutional capacities in various areas. However, following that project, we quickly realized that, and especially having the discussion with conservation trust funds in Africa, there was limited interaction with the private sector. And we did reach out to find out whether institutions had case studies, experiences, and to be very frank, it was very limited. And we realized that this was a very big need, and there was a very big gap in terms of conservation trust funds moving beyond just traditional sources of funding and engaging with the private sector in this area. From personal experience with the fund that I manage in Malawi, we have sensed that there is a very great will from the private sector to support conservation. However, it is framed within the corporate social responsibility kind of discussion. And having said that, it changes from one year to the other. So for this year, they could be supporting conservation, but in terms of corporate social responsibility, next year they could decide to support health, or they could decide to support education or agriculture or something else. So this really provides an opportunity for us to have a very, very strategic conversation with the private sector in terms of them learning about what conservation trust funds do and how they can place their efforts and their resources within the sector to actually make a significant difference. I'm mentioning corporate social responsibility because I'm from Malawi, and working with private sector companies, we've got a period of about 3 months in Malawi where we have a our tree planting season for the country. And you'll notice within those 3 months, nearly all the private sector banks, etc., insurance companies are jumping onto the bandwagon so that they can be seen to be planting trees. But we need to be having a much bigger, broader conversation with them. And this is why this bridge project is so important, because not only are we making the bridge between conservation trust funds and the private sector, but we're also making the bridge between the two networks of RedLAC and CAFÉ. So this is really an opportunity for us to have the frank discussion with the private sector so that we can move forward in at least mobilizing resources to the magnitude that is needed to reach the new biodiversity targets that are post 2020 that we are striving towards. So finally, I'd just like to say that a review of conservation trust funds, a 20-year review of conservation trust funds was done in 2020, and I think this was discussed also and presented yesterday. And this brings an amazing opportunity for conservation trust funds and the network to implement more innovative financial mechanisms, because that is what we need. We cannot continue doing business as usual, so this is really an opportunity to do that. And it also provides a means of having greater environmental impact, and this is what we're striving to do. And as we have also already done, is to continue to be important contributors of innovative solutions that our planet needs, and to continue linking the global priorities with local investments, which is a critical competency for us to achieve our global targets in future. So thank you very much, FFEM. Thank you, MAVA. Thank you, RedLAC. We're so pleased to be part of this initiative. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Karen. And now we will hear from Stephanie Bouziche-Eshman, who is the Secretary General of FFEM.
Hello, everybody. Always difficult to be the last one to speak because Karen and María, Katy said already a lot of things. But the bridge project is not only the story of one bridge, but several bridges. Of course, the bridge between two continents, Africa and Latin America and Caribbean. Also, of course, as Karen mentioned, the bridge between the CAFÉ and the RedLAC networks, exchanging experiences and know-how, but also the bridge between various actors, the conservation actors, the civil society, and now the private sector. And this is the ambition of this project, and that's why it's so innovative. And finally, the bridge not only around conservation, but between conservation, nature conservation, environment preservation, and sustainable development for local population. That's really important also to the heart of the FFEM. The FFEM has this mission since 1992 to 1994, to conciliate environment preservation and sustainable development in developing countries. And that's also the work you have in preserving the nature in your areas with the local communities and with social benefit for the local communities. So I'm very happy to be here to sign this engagement letter, commitment letter with the CAFÉ and the RedLAC to officially launch the bridge project. I think yes, we have the signature, and Katy and Karen, if you
Here we have things.
Nice to meet you too.
We will then. Yes. Maybe we can sign it later.
So that's it for the photo. That's done. So this is the commitment between RedLAC, CAFÉ, and FFEM for a new path of road. And now we will try to collect some feedback from the field and some testimonies from trust fund from CAFÉ and RedLAC, in order to have concrete experience coming from CTF. So we call it a kind of panel. So if the panel can join us, and we will have the second half of this day, of this hour for testimonies. Thank you very much. Thank you, Cathy. Thank you, Karen. And thank you, Stephanie.
Okay, thank you very much. We're having some technical issues, but we will fix them. So maybe we can figure it out. Okay, so now we have Constance Corbier, who will be So we will be hearing from Constance Corbier, who will be showing us or talking to us about the experience of conservation trust fund networks working together. We will then hear from Thierry Renaud from the MAVA Foundation. And then we will have some experiences from RedLAC and CAFÉ members who will be giving us their thoughts on how it is to work with the private sector, what they have done, what has worked, what are some of the challenges. And so please, Constance.
Thank you. So Karen said everything I wanted to say, and so this will be very short, but just to remind that the first RedLAC CAFÉ project we had together with MAVA and FFEM, and also the JEF, was evaluated through an independent, with a very good independent evaluation, and everything that Karen stressed was within the evaluation, which was very positive, stressing the importance of the two networks and the collaboration between these two networks to promote innovation within trust funds, to increase peer-to-peer approach, and mentorate was very successful. Exchange of good practices, exchange of ideas within the trust funds, creation of task force or community of practices that are still there. I can quote for CAFÉ the task force that was created during the first project on offset and compensation, which is still alive, and although the project is finished, and also a task force on monitoring. And I will stress, just to finish, because I don't want to take the floor too much, that for this new project, the monitor and the innovation, the monitoring of the impact and the monitoring of the innovation mechanism that we will promote will be very important, because as this first evaluation showed, we have to draw lessons from what we do, and we have to prove that CTF are good conveners to have more impact on the ground with the people and on biodiversity, but also on social and economic context. So thank you very much. And Thierry, you have a few words before leaving the floor to the CTF.
Yes, thank you, Constance. Hello, so maybe just a bit of context. MAVA Foundation, we have been funding nature conservation for the past 25 years, especially in protected areas in the Mediterranean and West Africa. But no donors want to be there forever and fund forever the same areas. So very quickly, we had to think about sustainable financial mechanisms that can continue funding over the long term. And that's how began our story with conservation trust funds. So we started discussing with AFD, FFEM, KfW, and other friends in Mauritania to create a trust fund, and then Guinea-Bissau, and then Northern Greece, Macedonia, and Albania, and now even the Med Fund. So we we now have fingers in quite a lot of conservation trust funds. But we also support the community of conservation trust funds, and always with FFEM, and that's not by chance. That's just because we have this good relationship and we trust a lot of the things that we're doing together. Same DNA, yeah. Yeah, with innovation and long-term vision. So supporting CFA and supporting the project K, which is the mother of this project that Constance mentioned. And of course, I'm sure you know that this engagement with conservation trust funds takes all its sense when we confirm that MAVA will close in 2022. So we really have to have good mechanism that can take over our funding. So maybe just a few elements, 4 elements that I want to highlight, which are also the reasons why we are supporting this project. The first one is the need for innovation. We really need to scale up the effort of conservation funding. We need more money to fund nature conservation. That can be channeled through conservation trust funds, but we need new mechanisms for that. But we also need to have more money, but we do not need to forget the impact. You know, sometimes we have a tendency to focus on increasing the amounts, where at the end, what matters is really what happens on the ground, and that's key for CTF to play both role, feet on the ground, but head in the financial sector. The second point is that conservation trust funds are not just endowment. I think we all agree with that, but that's key to remember that conservation trust funds play a key role to animate the discussion at the national or regional level about conservation finance, and they're a key player in that sector. But they need also to get funding for that, and I think as donors, it's our responsibility also to fund these different type of activities, which goes beyond just financial management and funding projects. Relevance of networks, we've discussed that a lot, but at MAVA, we believe a lot in networking, in the power of peer discussion, but we also see that networks are very tricky beasts. I don't want to say organization, because they should not be organizations. Very hard to sustain and to fund for. And I think it's very key to have the right positioning for networks and to really be to the service of its member. And that's really something that we see with CAFÉ and RedLAC, and something that will be continued through this project. And the fourth point is the need for South-South cooperation. And that's very important, and especially with conservation trust funds. Most of them are located, maybe not administratively, but located in what we call the South, and the expertise is there. And I think that's a big value for us of this bridge project, is really tapping on the local expertise, creating links between continent, Latin America and Africa, which brings a lot of value. Thank you.
I don't know if you noticed, but hello, now? Yes. So again, I don't know if you noticed, but we were having some logistical and technical issues, and that's where the network came in, and Karen was running around, and we were all trying to fix our issues, and now we're on track. So thank you for being patient with that. So now I would like to invite Ana Laura Varillas, who is the Conservation Director from the Mexican Fund for the Conservation of Nature, and is also a RedLAC member. Also Anton Willems, who is the CEO of Profonampe from Peru, also RedLAC member. I would also like to call Carl Brousseau, who is from the Mulanje Mountain Conservation Trust Fund, and is a CAFÉ member. Yes, so thank you very much for being here. and for supporting us. I would now like to give the word to David Meyers, who will be asking our panelists some questions regarding their experience with the private sector.
Thank you. I get to ask the hard questions. Really, they're not hard questions. Ana Laura, we'll start with you. Yeah, so just tell us a bit about what Fondo Mexicano has been doing with the private sector. There's some really interesting innovation happening there, so we'd love to hear.
Well, I was thinking on some, and I want to share with you an anecdote. Like it has happened like 6 years ago. We had a project that is called management of coastal watersheds in the context of climate change in a coastal region in the Gulf of Mexico. So we start this project, and suddenly a company and private company came to us and say, oh, please help me to restore some hectares of cloudy forest. And because they had to compensate. This is a company of coatings and of materials, of chemical materials. So, and they told us like, we need to restore, but we have, because they have to the corruption, like, okay, you need to buy a school bus, you need to pay for some local parties. So they were like, they couldn't do anything at all in this local level. So they come to us, and at the end, after some negotiations, we did that with local partners, with the NGOs of the states, with protected areas. Now we have a small endowment from them. But what am I saying is that this kind of things happens, and this is like the examples we will share in these kind of projects with Bridge, because we have to learn from the ground. There's not a receipt. I think we have learned a little bit how the multilateral agencies and the foundations work, but in the private sector is a complete story, each one. So I think it's gonna be, I feel honored to be part of this project of Bridge, because this is the way we can find some connections. Thank you.
Thank you. It's so in a way you reacted to this opportunity that came up, but I think that it's going to be interesting to identify new opportunities and kind of reach out to the private sector in new ways that conservation trust funds are not used to. So maybe over to Carl, and just you've had to kind of think about private sector needs, and where are the opportunities for expansion from what you're doing there? And
thank you, David. So we came at it from a more strategic level. We created a platform that's a multi-sectoral management plan. So instead of coming from the original basis of how we are working as a forestry protected area, what we did is we looked with all the stakeholders around the mountain at what the resources were on the mountain and how they could be used and how significant they were. So what we are trying to do is be inclusive and go forward from the beginning, from an outset, to see how how green commerce could come in. So this multi-sectoral management plan had 10 different resources, 10 different natural resources and services. They're all familiar to you. There's water, there's biodiversity, there's energy, there's water, tourism, there's biodiversity. All of these, there's 10 of them. And within those, what we do is we set up a coordinating committee that is involving government as a regulatory authority, usually, again, the regulatory authority, so it could be like the Malawi Energy Authority. Then there's commerce that's interested, community, research, academia, international NGOs, etc. So that forum exists in every single sector to work at looking at what the priorities are to do good business with that particular resource. Action plan, and It has a long-term 10-year plan for development of these resources. So already anybody can come into that forum and say, I would like to set up a cable car that goes to this part of the mountain. Am I welcome? And we will discuss it there and go from there. So it's a bit more putting out a proactive kind of platform where all the different organizations can discuss things and see what kind of investments are critical to developing the mountain's resources.
Really interesting, fascinating. And maybe going to Anton, for Profinampe, I mean, you've had some interactions with the private sector, and so how did they come about, and what are some lessons learned for the bridge project?
I think in Profinampe, in the past, we have done a lot with private sector, and currently we are trying to implement new innovative ways to work. In the past, you had like this model where the companies were obliged by regulation to support conservancy. For instance, we manage a portfolio of investment from an oil company that was obliged by the government to support a protected area, no? And that's one way of working, no? But currently we are working in different ways. We have set up a innovation hub, and this innovation hub will only work with companies. And so we are coming from customer experience models to go to the companies and ask them why are they not contributing to conservancy, no? And what do they need if they will? So we are designing from the ground with them and with a lot of stakeholders, and we have came to 6 different approaches to bring the resources. A second way of working with this unit is also working on the consciousness of the people. So people is becoming more aware of conserving the nature, preserving the nature. So trying to capitalize that consciousness, or conciencia in Spanish. I'm sorry for the translation, no, and trying to implement like crowdfunding platform so that they can put their support to some specific assets in the nature that you want to protect. And the last one is we are working also with big companies to set up ad hoc structures for them. For instance, if you have mining companies, we are working with them to set up a fund for reforestation, no? But this is something new, no? You have to learn by doing, because it's not as easy as knock on the door and ask a company to support a project. And I think one of the big challenges is to define the correct asset you are selling, no? Companies normally want to know what their value added is. When they put money, they want to appropriate from something that they did. So you need to have a kind of menu, no? And that companies can come, okay, on that dish or that dessert, I want to contribute, and give them the opportunity.
Very interesting, very different approaches in a way, right? So oftentimes with environment and business, we think about their dependency on nature and then the impacts they have on nature, right? So are there opportunities for identifying companies who are dependent on nature, and then going to them and with a certain product, as you're saying, a menu of options, and then, you know, with mining companies or those that are having impact, there's another set of menu options, another way to interact. And any insights from that?
Well, I think since it's starting, and we have been working on this like 12 months, no, since we start, you feel it's like each company has a special objective with their doing, no? And so, of course, those who requires natural resources like extractive companies are like more obliged to apport or support, because they need the social peace in their neighborhood. And what we are looking for is trying to set up some specific funds or things like that, so that they can contribute and the people can see that they are supporting. However, not all companies want to be visible. For instance, we are working with the Authority of Protected Areas with a mining company who is supporting a special reserve, and they don't want that the people know that they are supporting it, because it can have an impact on what they are doing in the neighborhood. So, and you have other companies like mobile phones companies or stuff like that, that they want to, they need to find creative ways to try to gather money from their clients, because it's not coming from their earnings. And so we have been like working with some guys, if you can put a small tax on your mobile abonnement, so that this can go directly to the fund. In Peru, for instance, with that I finish. When you go to the supermarket and there is people is accustomed to pay in cash. So when you have some cents, small cents to give back, they always ask you if you want to donate this to charity, And if you see the amount the supermarkets collect in the large numbers, it's big. And who takes all the credit is them, or not the customers. So I think with this project, with Bridge and with RedLAC, we will have a lot of opportunities to exchange these kind of learnings, but also to co-create new ways of doing things, because that's also that the system is demanding, is try to come with better and bold ideas. And if we work together, probably we will have bolder ideas.
Great, yeah, and it sounds like this project would be really good to sort of document this process and document the successes and the challenges, and then to be able to share with other trust funds. Well, maybe move back to Carl here, and I'm of course fascinated by your work with the hydroelectric, and I see that as a multiplier type investment. How did you decide as a trust fund to take a step towards being directly active in a kind of what would be considered a private sector area? I know electricity is partially regulated in government, but still it's a kind of a private investment. And what gave you the confidence or incentive to get into that?
When you're in one specific place where there is a certain level of resource abundance, you have an inclination that you want to use that to better particularly the social economic situation. So water, because we have the highest rainfall in Southern Africa, and we have 9 major rivers, and water is a huge resource for all sorts of different things, was something that we wanted to benefit from more. As I was saying yesterday in the presentation, what we tried to do was to attract the interest of companies to come in and do this. But after literally 5-8 years of failing, then we proactively stepped up ourselves. And the reason why we failed was because the regulatory environment in the country of Malawi gave all power generation and distribution to state agencies. So we really couldn't be expecting an organization to come. So then we looked at the platform and said, okay, what can we do about this? I'm sure many of you know of an organization out of UK called Practical Action. What is key always whenever you develop anything is to find the best advice to do everything. You never know, never think that you're ever going to know what is best. And I never thought I'd ever run an electricity company. So we attracted the interest of Practical Action. We looked around the mountain. We had a Swiss organization that came and did a hydropower potential. So good research, good background research is always important to understand what you have and what you can do with it. So there was a hydropower potential analysis done of the mountain that really looked at the areas that had the most potential. And then we started from there. And, you know, I come back to the fact that it was Project K that gave us the seed money to start. We had actually built one hydropower scheme already, and climate change came and took it away. Literally not just took it away, but we had 1 meter of rain in 36 hours. Now, if you can imagine, that's 1 meter of rainfall on a mountain. By the time it comes down the rivers where like all the water's going, it literally was about 50 meters of water. So not only did it take away our hydropower station, but it took away like 30 meters of subsoil and substructure underneath it. And that was it gone. And we came to Project K to basically say we've done the best that we can, and our hydropower station is somewhere in the ocean off Mozambique. Can we start again? We've done everything. We've done all the work, the feasibility studies, everything. So we basically, at the end of the day, did this ourselves because of total frustration of not being able to find anybody else to do it. And at that time, Project K invested into us. And for those of you that weren't here yesterday, I just alluded to the fact that with about $200,000, we rebuilt this. In the last 4 years, we took it up to 1,800 household connections and 200 businesses. And just in the last 2 months, we have negotiated the sale of 51% of the shareholding to Virunga Power Corporation. That's investing $15 million to build a 7 megawatt power station and a distribution system. That is together with Sainsbury's fairly traded premiums of about $500,000 each year, building the new, building a bigger distribution system to supply to about 10,000 households. This is a business. There's nothing strange about it. It's a good business. We have a wide diversity of tariffs all the way down from single-headed households. So if a woman who's got a family by herself, she pays like the least possible tariff, all the way up to a business who pays the most. And we have 7 different tariffs. So it makes a big difference to everybody.
Yeah, that's great, Carl. Thank you so much. It sounds like a social enterprise, which is
Totally,
in a way like, right, it's the perfect kind of engagement for a conservation trust fund.
And you can't imagine just how transformative to a community electricity is.
Right.
Just on a lifestyle level, the livelihood level, everything.
Education.
And the power, sorry, the payment for ecosystem. I haven't even mentioned the payment for ecosystem that we started in Malawi.
Right.
That was the main reason why we got the funding from from Project K.
Yeah. It's really a perfect blended approach, you know, business, trust fund, payment for ecosystem services. Yeah. It's great. Okay. Yeah. Excellent. Ana Laura, back to you. So Fondo Mexicano, you work with a range of private sector partners. I think you've been established for a long time here. What are the opportunities you see going forward? Where do you think there's some good opportunities for better engagement with the private sector?
Well, I will say that the challenge here with the private sector is that they incorporate the good practices into their whole work, because sometimes they just look for you to do a short-term project, but then they do not incorporate that on the whole system. For example, hotels or I know other enterprises. So that's the challenge, and we have to push them to do it. Otherwise, we are not making the change we want. We are just getting some cash. But this is not our purpose. Is to really do a change in the cadena de valor, the value change, yes, of this private sector. So yes. Some thoughts.
Yeah, that's a great point. And you know, you don't want people to just give money and greenwash, right?
Yes,
So that they look good for reputation. So one way to do that is to try to integrate the solutions into their business models themselves, right? So are there some examples that you've been looking at or thinking about for that? And how can you convince a company to do that?
The most safe for us as conservation trust for our reputation is that if this company, they have already these standards, it's easier for us because they have incorporated them in all the levels. So I'm just thinking now in a hotel chain, a Mexican hotel chain that they are they have these standards, and the chemical one I just already said, it's easy for us because they have this policy in what they do. So they are committed in a long term. Even, for example, the chain hotel last year, because of pandemic, they couldn't give us any money. Of course, they were in a crisis, but even so, they were like very close to us to say, here we are trying. At the moment we recuperate our economy, we will be. So it's like, yes, I will be patient with you, you know. So it was like a good effort.
Yeah. Anton, and then I'm going to see if there's any questions from the audience here. So
I think one last inroad that, how do you say, línea de trabajo, road of work, a line of work that we are developing, and I think that's also a demand on trust funds, is being a kind of impact investor. No, for instance, we currently are designing a project with GCF to set up a bio-business facility to look at this kind of new entrepreneur ideas to conserve, and at the same time just do a good for the nature, do a good for the people, and at the same time be sustainable on a financial basis. No. And so this impact bio fund, we will try it with Amazon entrepreneurships. And then if it works, we will try to expand it to the Andes and the coast in Peru. No? And on the question on Ana, Laura, that you mentioned, David, I think for trust funds, trying to solve all the problems that companies have is difficult. So I take the lesson from Carl that if we can share experiences and we can bring to the way of working better practices and better capabilities from specialized organizations, we can do a lot more. No, so probably we will not be able to give the company the entire set of things that they have to do in order to be sustainable or to change their value chain. But if we can also have the contacts of the different actors that can give them this kind of services, we are also doing a good. And I think that's also one of the lesson learned of RedLAC. We are able to share a lot of experiences and partners, and some of our partners in Peru work with partners in Chile or in other places. No? So that's also a way of working.
Excellent. Thank you very much for that. Opening up for questions, Olivier.
The private sector often doesn't see the link of its business to biodiversity. 10 years ago, I saw that in Cuatro Ciénegas, in north of Mexico, there's a huge opportunity of sustainable use of the candelilla for the conservation program. The candelilla is used for lipstick. I brought the industry there. You know, there's Chanel, Yves Rocher, they came and they helped the government of Mexico to improve the production system. They are now in the fragrance industry in south of France. Tuberose, for example, is the key fragrance, you know, used bringing millions of dollars. But they now, because of the climate change, you know, these companies should look at the biodiversity, you know, to keep the genes of their plants. And you have, I think, 3 species endangered of tuberose in Mexico. Tuberose is originating from Mexico. Do you have kind of visions or tools that you will try to see or to use to have the industry to look that biodiversity is linked to their value chains, even if it's other species, you know? the fragrance industry should be the one investing in the conservation program of tuberose, the genetic of tuberose in Mexico.
David, can I answer that, because we're in this business right now, and then I'll hand it over? The French fragrance industry does not want to give the story about how whatever you put on you, like a perfume, is at the moment related to a story out there that gets tenuous. Okay, they want to give you a product of what it is and what it means. I'm talking from a background of working with Phytotrade Africa, and at the moment we are developing a facility with the biggest, it's a 100-liter essential oil still in our organization, to pilot this with melange cedar and fragrances that we have orders from Body Shop now to take into the perfume market. Now, the problem is that, for example, the French industry in perfumes wants to sell a product with a very clear image of beauty, luxury. It doesn't at the moment want to be associated with a third world kind of conscience. I think it's going to change. And the important thing about what you raise is where we are in this business right now, there is huge room in the market to come with a different product. In other words, sell something that has more to your conscience, not so much for how you smell or how you look, okay? So we are well positioned to bring onto the market cosmeceuticals, nutraceuticals, even pharmaceuticals that can be marketed in a different way. Now, the essential part of your question that we need to look at is when you develop these products, you need to go through the global framework established underneath the CBD, established under the Nagoya Protocol, to the access and benefit sharing guidelines that hopefully you have in your own country. Because when you take a product that you're mentioning about in Mexico, that product was used by local people first, okay? So you need to somehow have a contract with those local communities that had that use in the first place. Because whenever you sidestep that, you're denying commercial involvement of the local people. So when you look at your access and benefit sharing guidelines, you have something that's called like non-disclosure agreements in the first place. Nobody should be talking about that product out in the public space to start with, because somebody else will come and benefit from it. But your mutually agreed terms and your prior and informed consents are contractual agreements. These are the tools that you will use to agree with the community, to agree with conservation, how you're going to have impact using that particular product, that natural product, to then bring benefits to the local people. Whether you're harvesting it from the wild, or whether you're taking it from the wild and you're domesticating it and growing it with smallholders, regardless, all of this has to be very carefully contracted with these tools underneath the Nagoya Protocol. There's no shortcut, and that's a lot of work, I can promise you.
Did you want to respond at all, or no?
Well, I think Carl has said a lot about it. I'm trying to remember some experience with this industry of the beauty industry. They have approached to us, a couple of them, but it's more that they are, as Carl said, they are looking for the image, like like sometimes with an actress or with an influencer that we are in contact with nature, but as I was saying, like we need a change in the chain value, because they want to give like a little bit for image or for the project, but they have to change their minds and to invest in all the system. For example, what you were saying, Cuatro Ciénegas, Candelilla, is like you really need to what do they need? The local communities, the management of the protected area. You need to really go deeper, you know? So I think that's the challenge with this kind of private sector.
Thank you. We're pretty much out of time, but if everyone's willing to stay for a bit more, I'm enjoying the conversation. I think you are too. If you're willing to do, we could do one more question, maybe. Did you have a question? Yeah.
I think my question is about the profitability of private sector. They mind more about profits, and I'm wondering when they come to support, whether they do an extra job or they remain within their obligations. Because if they are coming to support, do they go beyond their obligation or they just remain within their obligation?
Yeah.
I'll just say one thing, and that's really amazing in this business is certification. Okay, and certification prepares rules for everybody down the supply chain in many different areas of commerce. So then you know where you are as a business, or where you are as an NGO, or where you are as a customer, or where you are as a producer. Do you understand your position? So certification is critical.
Independent third-party certification.
Maybe it's for CTFs a role to gather this certification, but I think normally companies in developing countries, and Peru is now a middle-income country, they will come more when the regulation obliges them than when the system is requiring it. However, when our companies start to become bigger and they start to sell to new markets, then the standards and the certificates are very useful for them. And that's also a moment where the CTFs can take a part in the history, because if you are able to help them with that, then they will start to trust you more. Because as I mentioned yesterday, a lot of things is based on trust. So normally these companies don't trust the government. They don't want to give their money to the government. And they are not so aware of the CTFs. For instance, we are working the last 3 months with a PR company in order to make the press and the companies aware of the existence of Profonampe. And from 11 leaders of opinion in Peru that I had an interview, only one knew about Profonampe. So if you look and you think maybe the reality of Peru is the same with other countries, then we have a lot of work to do also to awake awareness with the people. Also, I think, again, this project will help us a lot. We will share a lot of experiences. This community of knowledge is basic, but what is good, I am learning now from Carl that I have a new business to develop in Peru, because I can also be an impact company and an impact investor, and with that earnings help to sustain the protected areas and other conservation of the nature.
Well, excellent. I think we're going to need to end there because we're going to just do a final thing before going. But I want to thank this amazing panel for your insights and your sharing.
Thank you, David, and thank you to CFA for hosting us. Thank you to David, to Kumar, and also to Katie Matthias, who has been supporting a lot of our work also through CFA. So thanks a lot for that. I would also like to take the opportunity to thank FFEM and also thank the MAVA Foundation. And I would like to thank the consultants that's helped structure this project. So I would like to thank Camila Monteiro and Ana Colorado. They were very important in this process. And yes, also thank you to the RedLAC and executive committees, to the president of CAFÉ, Karen Price, to the current president of RedLAC, also Zdenka Piskulic, for all their support with this. And now I would like to thank you all for being here. I hope this was useful for you. If you're not part of the networks, that you could learn about conservation trust funds, about conservation trust fund networks, and also that maybe if you want to share with us, want to also join us in any way, feel free to contact us. Come up to us in a couple of minutes, and we'll be glad to also see ways in which this can be replicated in other places, and more people can benefit from the power of networks and the power of collaboration. So thank you very much for being here. And just to finalize, I would like to ask RedLAC and CAFÉ members who are present at this time to please come up, and so that we can take an official bridge launching photo. Thank you.